What's up, guys? I do apologize for splitting this video into two parts. I normally don't do that, but the footage that I had would have been like over an hour long video. I mean, it was over an hour long before editing. The first part was probably 40 minutes by itself before I edited it, so I cut a lot of stuff out. So I only split it because I think it would have been too much for one video, so I split it up. I know some of you guys probably don't like that. Some of you guys maybe were anticipating it. I don't know. Thought maybe it would be kind of cool, something different. So here is the rest of the video, and you get to see the Slingshot finished up, which is, well, you'll see. Is it good or bad? I don't know. Alright guys, so what I'm going to kind of do is talk over this video as I watch it with you. Kind of point out some of the things that I caught myself doing wrong. Some of the things I realized, didn't think it would be a big deal. So here we go. It was already too hot. For starters, I should not have been spraying this in the middle of the day when it was roughly 95 degrees outside. So in the garage, even with the fans, it was probably over 100 degrees. And right here, I'm already holding the gun crooked. You need to be holding it completely parallel, just straight across whatever surface you're spraying, no angle whatsoever, because that's going to put more product towards the bottom of the, whatever angle you're holding the gun at. One side of that fan of spray is going to get way more product than the other, which is going to give you uneven coats, stripes, texture. And then in these creases right here where I just sprayed past, I sprayed way too far away. And actually, this wasn't the bad coat. This was nowhere near perfect, but when I was spraying my base coat, when I had that bad pickup tube, before I realized the pickup tube was bad, I thought it was something that I was doing. And unfortunately, I just kept going when I should have just stopped and waited. Did the right thing, but, me, I'm impatient. So of course I didn't do that. I sprayed all of my base down with that bad pickup tube, which you just essentially had to spray like heavier coats to kind of mask the spitting, for lack of a better term. Like it would literally just kind of like the product onto the panel, which made little droplets and stuff. But because of that, there was a lot of extra air being sprayed out of the gun too, and with this heat, that just made it dry even quicker. And when I sprayed the two corner, or the two big lines you see going down the hood, like the two big creases, I did that completely wrong, and it left a very, very, very rough texture that kind of ruined everything. And for some reason, I decided to paint over it, thinking that, okay, I'll just paint a little heavy and it'll cover it. Well, plot twist, it did not cover it. So here is a close-up picture of that texture, because it's actually hard to see in person in the video, and even if you're just like a person walking by, like, wow, that's a cool color. This didn't actually stick out to anybody but me, but you can see it literally looked like sandpaper, like as if I sprayed over sandpaper. So right here, I'm spraying way too far away. I need to be holding the gun straight down as I'm spraying this, and I'm not keeping a consistent distance when I'm going across the panel, because that panel goes up and down, and I'm holding it at one height through that whole panel. So big issue right there. The back I did fairly well on. There's not a lot of there's a lot of twists and turns and awkward spots to spray, but there's no dips and crazy angles like I had to deal with on the front. So right here, I'm also doing a big no-no. I'm just kind of like glazing over some spots that I thought, could use a little extra product. The majority of it is already dry because of this heat, and I'm just basically spraying another layer over some dry spots that's not going to blend in because there's nothing else that's being sprayed, if that makes sense. But at this point, I was pretty much desperate. To be honest with you, I was extremely frustrated. Basically from the masking process until this whole process was done. It was a lot harder than it should have been, I guess would be the easiest way to put it. Okay, so it was at this point that I had done some research. It was the next day, if not a couple days after. I was using the pre-dip spray, which is just what you spray it down and wipe it down with before you actually spray the plasti-dip, and some 600 grit sandpaper. 600 is the perfect grit. 800 was not rough enough, but anything under 600 would be too rough and would actually probably do damage to the plasti-dip. The unfortunate part is you do not wet sand this stuff like you do a car. You have to use the pre-dip spray because that just... I would almost compare its consistency to like a really soapy water. And that also kind of sucks because it makes the sandpaper almost impossible to hold. Like, it took me so much longer than it should have to do this because I had to keep like moving the sandpaper around, and at one point like I was literally holding it with both hands. I didn't have a sanding block handy, which might have helped. But in these areas that I'm in right now, it would have been too thick anyway, so I would have had to do it by hand. But if you do spray plasti-dip and you end up with a texture or some rough spots that you don't like, you can wet sand it and save it. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of time. And something like this, I also recommend letting it completely dry again for another day or so. Because you do not want to spray when there's any kind of liquid that could possibly come out of one of these cracks or crevices, because that'll basically ruin the dip. I mean, won't ruin it, but that part will not adhere, and it'll eventually just bubble up more and more and more, and just look terrible, probably rip, and ruin your dip job. So unfortunately I didn't really do like a final video outside of the garage before doing this part, but it was gonna be kind of hard to tape the stripes off, and then I was like, you know what, a lot of these slingshots have black stripes, you know, no matter what color they are. I was like, I'm gonna paint mine and just go right over them, you know, I'm gonna dip right over them, and I think, you know, the solid purple front end will look really good. And then it's hard to see. I'm watching it right now. It's really hard to see the texture. The black strips right there that I'm working on, they're textured. They just got kind of like that rough texture. But even spraying the dip really thick, the texture just didn't come through right, if that makes sense. Like, it just didn't look right. It looked like it was supposed to match the hood, but didn't. So I was not happy with the way it looked. It wasn't even that I wasn't happy, but something definitely looked wrong, and I couldn't really put my finger on it until I decided to say, screw it, I'm going to peel these off and see what it's like. So it's a little hard because these are textured to get a corner peeled and they're rounded, but once you get it, it's so satisfying to just peel it right off. So as I'm peeling it right here, you can see that edge. The edge left a little bit of extra material. So what I basically have to do is go in there with like a screwdriver or like even some kind of knife, just something flat that I can basically peel that edge off with, and it actually came out pretty nice after I put in a little bit of effort. See how it's really smooth here? And it gets super rough.